Hello, today we're going to talk about one of the most interesting and important organizations in the world of development. It's also one of the most controversial. I'm referring to the International Monetary Fund. One of the questions that people really try to get a handle on is whether the International Monetary Fund can be considered a development organization or whether it has some other role in the international financial framework. So we'll explore this a little bit, and hopefully we'll be able to come to some answer to that question. First of all, there are two basic what they call Bretton Woods organizations. These are organizations that were formed after World War II. Their specific function was to stabilize the international financial system, but also to provide development assistance loans to the countries that were devastated by World War II, and then eventually evolved into a global development organization that is in more recent decades focused on sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America and other sort of underdeveloped parts of the world. The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank have very distinct and different tasks and missions, and we will explore the IMF this week, and then next week we'll talk about the bank. Now, when we try to understand the intellectual groundwork that went into the International Monetary Fund and what its sort of underlying philosophy is, or how that philosophy has evolved, the word neoliberalism often pops up. And basically, this is an economic philosophy that believes that the free autonomous individual is the primary economic unit, and that the state is cast as interfering and controlling and therefore inhibiting the economic possibilities of individuals. They say that the welfare state in particular is the arch enemy of freedom, the welfare state being the state which expends a tremendous amount of money in taking care of various types of social obligations. So neoliberalism believes that the state must never govern society or dictate to individuals how to dispose of their private property or regulate a free market economy or interfere with the right to make profits or amass personal wealth. They believe that social engineering led by the state must never prevail over corporate and private interests. They also believe that the welfare state mistakenly sees its role as intervening in the economy, redistributing wealth, universalizing life chances, attacking unemployment, and so forth. Things which which are really the basis of the social safety net as we've come to understand it. They also believe that the utopian sentimentality upon which the welfare state is based can deprive a nation of its moral fiber and erode personal responsibility. So I'm not suggesting that that this is the sole philosophy of the IMF. It certainly, however, forms the basis of much of the sort of basic way that the IMF deals with its client countries, where there's this sort of tension between the demands of the social welfare part of governing versus the real need to promote individual incentives and individual entrepreneurship. Another way of looking at sort of the philosophical underpinnings of the fund and other financial institutions that have an impact on the global economy is to explore what is meant by the Washington Consensus. Basically, the two organizations I mentioned, the IMF and the World Bank, participate in a discussion of global financial governance that's based on a number of principles, and these principles have been characterized as being called the Washington Consensus. These consist of things like strict fiscal discipline, tax reform, trade liberalization, privatization, and most importantly, and consistently with the ideas of neoliberalism, is to reduce the role of the state. In order to implement the programs that flow out of the thinking, the neoliberal agenda, the Washington Consensus agenda, the term structural adjustment is often used. The World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, is brought into situations where a country's debt has spun out of control, or the currency has collapsed, or economic life is hardly functioning at all. So the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, comes in with a set of tools and ideas that countries need to implement in order for the International Monetary Fund to help put the economy back on its feet. And the number one thing is, the government has to reduce its expenditures and deal with its debt. They've also got to remove restrictions that inhibit the free trade or the free flow of currency. They have to slim down public bureaucracies. They have to implement various ways of expanding the tax base and tax collection mechanisms. And they also need to cut down on freebies such as free education and healthcare, and bring a market mentality into those things. It's no secret or no surprise that the structural adjustment programs are not very popular. They usually result in a lot of social pain, and that pain is often bared by the poorest members of the societies in which it's occurring. So this is why the International Monetary Fund has become so controversial. It's because of these structural adjustment programs and the social pain and social disruption that they've caused. The IMF was saying, this is all necessary because without these, the economies would totally flounder. And we have to look case by case to see whether that's true. So this neoliberal Washington Consensus has come under withering criticism also from anti-globalization activists, from labor unions, indigenous right activists, and assortment of other NGOs. And the basic criticisms are that that these structural adjustment programs are unfair to the most vulnerable. They don't take account of the large amounts of corruption that often exist in these client states. They proceed without stakeholder involvement. There's no accountability. I mean, these programs are just implemented, and whatever happens seems to sort of just go without much comment, unless there's an outcry from NGOs or from other observers of what's going on. But the IMF has been accused of being unaccountable for the often negative effects of its programs. And also there's a certain one-size-fits-all mentality, which also does not take cognizance of difference that really exists in different parts of the global economic sphere. So now that we've gone through several decades of structural adjustment programs, and we've embraced the criticisms of structural adjustment and the neoliberal philosophy and the way that the IMF has traditionally done business, there's emerging what's being called a post-Washington consensus, and this essentially is calling for more liberalized trade, finance, and monetary systems, which is consistent with Washington consensus as it existed, but also the creation of enforceable codes and standards and concessions to social welfare through targeted social safety nets. So in other words, we're not going to just blanket get rid of the social safety net, because that causes too much pain and destruction. We also want to have vertical and horizontal policy coherence, meaning that the structural adjustment programs have to be in sync with the policies and strategies that are being adopted locally, and also that private sector should be heavily involved in these PRSP process, which is the poverty reduction strategy process that we'll talk about in more detail when we discuss the World Bank next week.